They raced through the hallways chanting, "Hang Mike Pence. Where's Nancy?" They stormed onto the Senate floor because they wanted to stop the Senate from certifying the election. The rioters tried to take over the House floor for the same reason. Thankfully, some astute young staff member had the presence of mind to grab the physical electoral ballots for safekeeping. These rioters were organized. They were ready for a fight, and they came close to succeeding. It's frightening to think about how close we were. A few inches of wood and glass. An officer turning left instead of turning right. But just describing that attack doesn't come close to capturing what actually took place that day. So we're going to see some of what our witnesses saw on January 6th. Let's see the video, please. But please be advised that it contains graphic images and strong language, which many may find disturbing.
Hey, brother, we're boots on the ground here. We're moving on to Capitol now. I'll give you a boots on the ground update here in a few.
Multiple Capitol entries! Multiple Capitol entries! We're still taking metal, sharpened objects, missiles to include bottles and rocks, and hand-thrown chemical-grade fireworks. Effectively a riot.
1349 hours declaring it a riot.
Okay, guys, apparently this tip of the spear has entered the Capitol building.
If I give this up, they're going to have to run next to us. At least this Capitol we can defend. We got to hold what we have.
Take your pens off.
Yeah. The fuck?
Take your pens off.
Has blanked 1033. I repeat, 1033 was from the Capitol. We have been blanked and we've lost the line.
They've got the gallows set outside this Capitol building. It's time to start fucking using them.
Start making a list, put all those names down, and we start hunting them down one by one.
Traitors get guillotined!
Mobilize in your own cities, your own counties, storm your own Capitol buildings, and take down every one of these corrupt motherfuckers. So we fucking need to have 30,000 guns up here.
That's true.
He'll be back, he warns us. It's just chilling. I thank God for our democracy and our republic withstood this assault. But that man's warning reminds us that this threat hasn't gone away. It looms over our democracy like a dark cloud.
Welcome, everyone, to San Antonio SATX Indivisible's January 6th Vigil for Our Democracy. My name is Jan Riolini. I'm a volunteer on the leadership team of SATX Indivisible. And my colleagues in the Indivisible group include Jane Warsaw and Peter Bella, and they will also be guiding us through tonight's program. SATX Indivisible is a nonpartisan organization dedicated to fighting for our democracy through grassroots outreach, collaboration, and activism. We are interested in your thoughts tonight. Throughout the program, please feel free to put your comments and your ideas, maybe links to resources, into the chat, and your questions into the Q&A box. While we will not be able to address all these things tonight, this is important information for our programs going forward, and we hope to be able to reach out to you soon. Today, as you know, is a day of remembrance and action. And during our vigil tonight, there are several things that we'd like to accomplish. We're here to mark this day and remember it has been one whole year since the attack on our Capitol. We're here to honor the patriotic people who defended the Capitol. For example, Officer Eugene Goodman. We're here to mourn those who died and to remember those who were injured. We're also here to understand what has happened since that attack on the Capitol, what is happening now. We're here to understand the continuing attack on our democracy and to understand what we can do to defend our democracy. We're also here together this evening to strengthen ourselves for this important work ahead. There are so many issues that we care about, but without our democracy, we won't be able to affect any of them. I'm thinking about climate change and racial justice and immigration justice and reproductive justice and LGBTQ rights and fighting corruption and many more. When we fight for our democracy, we fight for all these things. And now Jane Warsaw will be introducing our next speaker.
Hi, everybody. It's my privilege to introduce you to the Honorable José Menendez, Texas State Senator of District 6 since 2015. Senator Menendez has passed over 200 bills that have benefited children, seniors, veterans, and San Antonio families. His public service career began in 1997 when he was elected to the San Antonio City Council District 6 office. He was then elected to serve as state representative for House District 124 in year 2000. His commitment to enhancing education has been demonstrated by the various educational bills he has sponsored, as well as securing millions of dollars worth of funding for various educational institutions. José Menéndez's contributions to public service have not gone unnoticed, as he has received various awards, including the Senator of the Year Award and the Legislator of the Year Award. Despite these highly regarded awards, the Senator's greatest honor, in his own words, has been to serve the people of Texas. Senor Menendez, thank you for joining us tonight. We invite you to speak for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Jane. I appreciate that. It's always good to be with so many people who love this country and, most importantly, love the democracy that it's built upon. And I want to thank San Antonio SATX Indivisible for having this vigil tonight. It's too easy to with what everything that this nation and we're all going through. It's in some ways it could be easy to forget how close we were to having our nation's history marked by something so dark and so dangerous. Those people who we saw in that video have no interest in a democracy that stands for everyone, that stands for free and fair elections. And so I want to thank you for inviting us all to be here, because it's groups like yours that are imperative to organizing and ensuring that our community has a space to come together. And tonight, as we come together to talk about a fundamental right to vote, which is the fundamental building block for a democracy, one that seems to be continues to be chipped away at because people don't like the outcomes when everyday Americans choose to make their voices heard. In this last legislative session, the state of Texas passed one of the worst pieces of voter suppression legislation in the country. And this state continues to be at the bottom of voter turnout. And it's not the voters' fault. I mean, in many ways, frankly, it's because we've made it one of the hardest states in the nation to vote. And like many other states, we suffer from a shortage of election workers. And who's going to want to work when they know that partisan hacks can come in and roam freely around the election site, and that they might be put at risk, and that those people have more rights than the actual people, the election judges. And SB 1, Senate Bill 1, exacerbated this issue. The bill was presented as an attempt to, quote, uphold election integrity, when in reality it was a direct attack on the people of Texas' right to vote, and it would make the jobs of our election officials that much more difficult. Some of the worst provisions in the bill would be requiring that the state's Secretary of State to compare voter rolls to DPS, information on citizenship, in order to conduct discriminatory voter purges, which we have already seen have taken place in South Texas. And you know, the thing is, I'll tell you, many new Americans, people who have gone through every hurdle that's been put up to become a US citizen, many of those new Americans value their right to vote so greatly that they don't miss an election. And so for someone to arbitrarily purge them is just unconscionable. And so the Secretary of State's office in the bill would have to share which voters on the registration rolls would be disqualified from jury service for a lack of citizenship or residency to the AG's office. Drive-through voting was being banned, which is a direct attack on people, most importantly, working class people, most importantly, single parents, most importantly, people who don't have the money for nannies or babysitters sometimes. And many of those are people of color disproportionately. You know, I can bet that of course, the elderly, that most parents who have young children, it's difficult for them to think about taking the children out of the car seat, taking them in, taking them out, corralling 2 or 3 by themselves. And so, you know, in relation to this part of the bill, the Secretary of State's election staffer mentioned that there was no evidence of fraud in the drive-through voting in the state affairs hearing. Their own employee said no evidence of fraud. I mentioned the partisan poll watchers that would be allowed to freely move within the polling location. Freely move, instead of being able to be told by an election judge, sit here, stand here, and watch, and you can see. No, move around, which would embolden them to act as vigilantes, to potentially look over the shoulders or threaten voters. Overnight voting was banned, making it even more difficult for working class voters to find time to cast their ballot. Many people, especially our healthcare workers during COVID, were working 12-hour shifts. 12-hour shifts. So once they got off their shift exhausted from taking care of patients all night, then they needed to get some sleep. But yet they wanted to do away with it for whatever time of window they might have at whatever night, maybe after they got off their shift at night, to go out and vote. Vote harvesting, which is not being clearly defined, will now be punished with a criminal offense and a civil liability. Election officials can now face penalties if they violate the election code, criminalizing the individuals who run our elections. Election cases would be needlessly prioritized, leading up to an election, clogging up the courts with election cases when there are more pressing issues they should be focused on. This bill, friends, was a solution looking for a non-existent problem to solve. The Texas Secretary of State, our top election official, stated that the 2020 elections were safe and secure. Moreover, the first part of the Texas additional audit found very few issues, further solidifying the 2020 election were in fact safe and secure. People who were incentivized to find issues found no issues. So if history has shown us anything, it is that any type of restriction or limitation imposed on our voting process is used to suppress the vote of many communities, many of them communities of color, many of them people who are socially, economically disadvantaged, many of them who are elderly, who have trouble, getting around. And so I have heard from many of my colleagues in their pursuit of this bill to claim that the bill was going to make it easy to vote, but hard to cheat. That was their comment. When in actuality, the bill cheats our most vulnerable voters by making it easy for those in power to decide who is granted the privilege to have their voice heard on election day. The legislature should not be working to limit the fundamental right. We are all given, all citizens. Instead, we must focus on making voting more accessible for our fellow Texans through policies such as universal mail-in ballots, county-wide polling, 24-hour and drive-through voting. How on God's green earth, in counties that have multiple millions of people, do you say it's okay to have one drop-off location, one box? It's imperative that we continue to organize and work together to ensure the protection of our fellow Texans and their fundamental right to vote. And I'll close with this, folks. I sit here as a child of 2 immigrants from countries where their vote was not always respected. And my parents, when they both became US citizens, they valued that right so much that they dragged their children with them to participate, to learn, to help them talk about what they had heard about issues. And it is because of their love for this country that I'm here before you. And I will do whatever it takes to make sure that no one who is eligible to vote is robbed or intimidated because they want to make their voice heard. Thank you for being here. Your presence and your work is imperative so that we can save our democracy.
Thank you so much, Senator Menendez. That is so moving. I think we sometimes forget how many mountains people have climbed over to vote. Next, I'd like to introduce State Representative Trey Martinez Fischer. The Honorable Representative is serving his 10th legislative session, fighting for the people of San Antonio in our Texas House of Representatives. He's been known as someone who won't back down from his convictions, often affecting legislative outcomes by speaking eloquently, forcefully, and cleverly from the back microphone in Austin. Representative Martinez Fischer, we are just so happy to have you here today. It's really an honor, and we hope that you can help us understand what the Texas Democratic House members did when they went to Washington. Why did they go, and what did they accomplish? So thank you so much.
Of course, thank you, Jan, for having us. And thank you, SATX Indivisible. I understand you also are partnering with DFAD, the Declaration for American Democracy, which was a huge partner for us in Washington while we were there. And thank you for your kind words about our fighting spirit. I think it's in our San Antonio water. I know that Senator Menendez has that fight. I know Rep. Lopez has that fight, who's also on this Zoom, as all the members of the delegation are. And listen, I mean, Chair Thompson said it correctly in the video that we watched, that the threat has not gone away. We knew in Texas, we knew in Austin, that if we left the Texas floor, we left the Capitol, we would be doing it with tremendous consequences, and we did it anyway. And we did it because we felt like it was the right thing to do. We did it because we thought it was the only thing to do. Every single one of those insurrectionists you saw in the video, under the current election law that we fought, can be a poll observer, and they will have more rights at the ballot box than the election workers. And you, as hardworking voters and citizens, if you decided to assist your neighbor because they didn't understand English, if you decided to help your neighbor vote because they had a disability, you could go to jail. And that is the irony in this legislation. That's why we knew we had to leave. When we left, we weren't united on this. Many Democrats thought that we shouldn't do this because it would only come back in a worse form. They would pass a much harsher bill. I will tell you that didn't happen. Because of some of our fight and because of the noise we made, Republicans immediately took out language that was going to alter the time you could vote early on a Sunday because it infringed on what we know as the Souls to the Polls program, prolific, what you would see in African-American churches, where you would go to a church service and then you would leave as a congregation to go vote. Republicans wanted to change the time that you could vote on Sunday to eliminate or to make it harder for those programs to exist. That was one of the big benefits of us leaving. There was another provision dealing with how you can cure a vote by mail ballot, which is a little bit more into the weeds, but yet again, another fix. And then I think we tried to the 11th hour to restore some language that would have exonerated some people who had been accused of illegal voting. We weren't able to actually make it with language, but there was a very sincere effort on the part of Republicans to work with us to exonerate some people who had been accused falsely, in my opinion, for voting illegally. Going to Washington, I will tell you, just think about this for a moment. You're not going to hear Senator Cornyn or Senator Cruz advocate for voting reforms on behalf of Texans. And so we provided that voice. And I can tell you, Senator Menendez met with Senator Manchin. I had the privilege of spending a long time with his top staff, looking at the bill line by line, page by page. And given the way you vote in West Virginia is much different than the way you vote in Texas. And when Senator Manchin and his team understood that shift workers cannot vote by mail in Texas, when Senator Manchin understood that people who are afraid to stand in line because of a pandemic couldn't vote by mail in Texas because you can in West Virginia, I'll even go so far as to say that in West Virginia, if you're in the county jail let's say, because you're arrested for a DWI, you can vote by mail in the county jail in West Virginia. You can't do that in Texas. And so when Senator Manchin understood just how high the hurdles were and just how much tripwire was on the ground, this was all happening as he began to evolve on this issue and started writing out his deal points as to what he wanted to see in federal legislation. I'll give you a really good example. We spent 20 minutes talking about why are Democrats opposed to voter ID? We need voter ID. We need voter ID. I'm not opposed to voter ID. I don't speak for Senator Menendez, but I know him well. He's not opposed to it either. He just wants a voter ID program that lives in the real world. And that's what we explained to Senator Manchin, that in Texas, if you don't have an ID, but you want to go vote, you can get a free card to go and vote issued by the Department of Public Safety. If you live in West Texas, you'll make a 200-mile round trip to get it. And so when Senator Manchin was listening to this, they began to say, well, maybe our ID system, if we have a voter ID, it should include things like a Medicare card, a student ID, a Medicaid card, a utility statement, a bank statement, an ID system that lives in the real world. And now you see that as a major provision of the bill. You also see things like in Texas, elections will be national holidays. For the country, it'll be a national holiday. But how exciting to have that in Texas. If you're 16 years old and you get your driver's license, you can pre-register to vote. You can take a reservation to vote at the age of 16 when you're applying for your driver's license. So a number of provisions. We were there every day on the Hill, talking with senators, talking with House leaders, talking with the White House to convince them as to why we needed to save our democracy. We were warned in Texas. We saw the voices of voters get silenced in Georgia. We saw a state lawmaker in Georgia get arrested for wanting to attend the bill signing ceremony as a peaceful protest. The governor of Georgia had her arrested. We saw the voices of voters silenced in Florida. We saw the voices of voters silenced in Arizona. We knew what was coming in Texas. And we felt like if they did it here, they will do it anywhere. And what really, if you want the inside baseball, what really just put us over the tipping point is, if you recall, we broke quorum on a Sunday. On a Saturday, I was here in San Antonio with my wife and kids. We were outside. And President Biden issued a statement saying that the Texas election law was anti-democratic. And what you have to understand is that there are 300 million people living in the United States of America. And on a Saturday afternoon, around 4 o'clock, the President of the United States was talking about us and was talking about this bill. Most powerful person on the planet. And he's taking his time to single out Texas for anti-democratic legislation. That told me right then and there that we needed to leave the Texas Capitol, and we needed to find a way to get ourselves to Washington, D.C. and be part of this conversation. So it's not over. Hopefully we will have a major development next week. Keep your fingers crossed. Keep doing what you're doing. Never forget about January 6th. Never forget about the voices of people who cannot vote. Never forget about what our job is. It's not just to take care of ourselves. It's to pay it forward for the person who can't. José, Ray, and I, the delegation, we are the voice for those of you who do not have one inside that Texas Capitol. And that's a job that we are very, very proud. We love doing this job, but we love doing it because we serve with you. And so let's not forget, let's continue to be vigilant here, and let's protect our democracy. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you so much, Representative Trey. I feel so strongly about hearing you as you were coming back, hearing and seeing the pictures, the videos of our representatives, and sometimes our Senator Menendez, and definitely Congressman were there with you as well. But working together to try and help the whole country take care of this. It was just such an important moment. Thank you for being here, Rep. Martinez Fischer. It's just, it's an honor to have you. Thank you so much. And now I'm going to switch the order of things just a little bit because Congressman Castro will be joining us at 6:45, and he'll be talking about what happened during the January 6, 2021 event and what the House Select Committee is finding, what we're learning about how that happened. But since he's not able to be here for a few more minutes, let's go ahead and I'll ask Jane Warsaw to please introduce State Representative Ray Lopez. Thank you.
I would be delighted to do that. It's my pleasure and privilege to introduce to you the Honorable Ray Lopez, now serving as the State Representative for Texas State House District 125. Representative Lopez has a long-standing, strong commitment to public service and helping others. He was elected to the San Antonio City Council in 2004, where he represented the people in Council District 6 for 4 consecutive terms until reaching his term limit. Earlier in life, Representative Lopez joined the U.S. Armed Forces, where he served 14 years in the Army Reserve. In 1990, he was elected to the Northside Independent School District's Board of Trustees, where he was a champion for public education, serving as board president. Representative Lopez has received wide recognition for his professional and civic accomplishments, including being named to AT&T's Leaders Council and Circle of Excellence. He was also inducted into the Harlandale Independent School District Hall of Fame for his lifelong work in education and community service. I would also like to mention that Ray Lopez has been a great friend and supporter of SATX Indivisible. In addition to speaking today, he has addressed our voters at our banner drop on the Riverwalk. He has spoken at our online redistricting training and has met with us to discuss strategies to save our democracy. Representative Lopez, welcome and thank you for joining us today. We invite you to speak for 5 minutes.
Well, Jan, thank you very much. I'm hoping that all the electronics is working, the audio, video, and all of that kind of stuff. So if it isn't, somebody jump in and tell me what I need to do to make sure that it does happen. I want to share a message with you that really comes deep within my heart and my soul. And I know that Jan, you, Jane, Peter, the entire SATX Indivisible cadre support. It's incredibly important. We've lived a lifelong effort to try to, make sure that our community is better tomorrow than it is today, and that today is that we learn from and execute on today what we learned from yesterday's mistakes. And by God, we know that there are a lot of mistakes that were made yesterday and the day before, and I would say a year ago today, particularly. It truly is an honor to be here and to continue to work with you. I was thinking back as Trey was talking about our time in Washington last August, and there were a lot of, a lot of tears that were shed, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, I guess you could say, around the efforts of trying to get people to understand why and what we were doing. Many back at home were accusing us of abandoning our job, of taking advantage of an opportunity to go out and have a good time on the government's nickel. Nothing could be further from the truth. First of all, we were working extremely hard, and I would argue that we didn't leave our jobs. We indeed were doing exactly what our jobs require us to do, and that is to defend democracy in every facet, in every corner, in every effort that we possibly can. We did that. We were doing that collectively. There's 67 Democrats on the House floor. 57 of us made the trip to Washington on the quorum break. And we held united the entire time that we were there, trying to figure out a way how to stop or to change or to redirect what was happening. I do believe, and Trey mentioned it a few minutes ago, that in the near future, there is going to be some movement on legislation that's going to help us navigate through this difficult time. that legislation was not on the front burner until we got there. We managed to make it come to the front burner and managed for it to be considered. And if they weren't going to support it, then they needed to explain it. Explain it away if you can. They couldn't. And while we can say that we were there fighting for Texas and Texans and our districts and the like, the reality is that we were really fighting for many, many other states across this great country. My understanding from the Brennan Center of Justice, there are 19 states that have passed incredibly onerous legislation that make it more difficult to vote, particularly people of color, young people, elderly, people with disabilities, and on and on. Making it more difficult is not the objective of a democracy. And we were recognizing that it wasn't just happening in Texas, that it was happening across this country. I lived through the arrogance on the floor, along with my colleagues, of our Republican colleagues answering questions like, I'm not advised, when we would ask them very pointed questions on why they were doing certain things and why they wouldn't accept certain amendments that we were offering that certainly made sense. They had the arrogance to basically say, I am not advised. In democracy's sake, we should be advised. If we're going to make these kinds of arguments, then we have to be advised on every single facet of the issues that we're moving forward. That arrogance didn't change, whether it was voting rights, whether it was women's rights, and gun rights, or any of the other draconian Republican initiatives that were brought forward during this past session. The I am not advised was the mantra that they continued to use, and it was incredibly frustrating. So you kind of wonder, why in the world would they do these kinds of things? And did they actually believe in them, or were they being led down a particular path by some nefarious leader? And the answer is, that's right. There was a nefarious leader, a group of leaders. There were, and all of those individuals, what I refer to as Trump partisans, folks that were appointed to election boards to manage inspections and the like across the country, that are all like-minded with Trump or Trump partisans. Today, as we were looking at retrospectively what happened a year ago, January the 6th of last year, we saw many of those individuals on cameras that are part of that whole mechanism of partisanship, of that group being assembled and move forward. And those are exactly the individuals that are going to be standing there, being the judges, being the people that are looking over individuals' shoulders as they vote. And if you think they won't do it aggressively, look at the film. Watch what happened in Washington, D.C. We saw it again this afternoon in the opening of this particular meeting. And we know that they exist. And some of them truly are going to jail, deservedly, but many of them are not. Many of them came back to work in the precincts as precinct chairs, as election judge monitors and the like. So we have got a tremendous challenge ahead. We've got to figure out how we can avoid the perils of diminishing democracy. We can make a difference. The only way we're going to be able to make a difference is organizations like SATX Indivisible and other organizations out there that truly believe in the fundamental basics of a democracy, to unite and stick together. I can tell you as well that that group of folks is growing. Not only is it growing in number, but it's elevating in its efforts to try to resolve these issues. I am up for re-election this coming election cycle, and I've been out doing what we all do, knocking on doors, talking to folks. And while I recognize that many of the folks that I talk to are working a second or a third job, trying to put food on the table, trying to provide for medical coverage for their families, don't have the opportunity to listen to MSNBC or CNN or even Fox News for that matter. They don't have the opportunity, and they're getting frustrated, and they're hearing a lot of negative discussions. So it's up to us as elected officials, as organizations like SATX Indivisible, to go out and take that message to those individuals and have them understand there is a path forward. It's as strong as we want to make it. And I believe that democracy will continue to prevail in our great nation. And it's going to be individuals like yourself and those of us that are a part of your organization to make it come to fruition. Once again, I want to thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to share a few of my thoughts. I can assure you that I could go on and on, like all of us could, talking about the passion that we have for our great country and our great democracy. But I think our actions will speak louder than our words, and you have my commitment to continue those very strong and aggressive actions. And once again, thank you so much for the opportunity to address you this evening.
Thank you, Ray. We so appreciate all you're doing and all that you mean to us as a let Texas vote. All right. Hear, hear. Definitely let everyone who is qualified vote. Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. And we invite you to stay and watch the rest of the program. And if not, we bid you health and happiness.
Thank you. I'll be here.
Thank you. And now I'd like to turn to a topic that is related. It's what's going on in DC. It's actually going on all over the country, but it has to do with what the bipartisan House Select Committee on January 6th is finding out and what we're learning about what happened on last January 6th. We've asked Congressman Joaquin Castro to help us understand that, and we welcome him. I want to say how much I appreciate the opportunity to introduce this amazing congressman. And again, we thank you for the beard, all of us who have made that terrible mistake of greeting the wrong person. He has an identical twin brother who you may know as well, is Julian. But we very much appreciate your being here. Congressman Castro, I first heard about before I ever met him, as a newbie to San Antonio, when he was in a Riverwalk parade. And that was when I first heard of him. So I got very interested and learned about city government, and also got to meet him when I was working in with the health departments and with Healthy Futures of Texas, working on sex education bills for Texas. As a as a representative here in Texas, a state representative, Joaquin was really the person who he and his staff were really leading the charge on trying to make sex education about real world here. And we really appreciated that.
Thank you,
now
Jen.
hang on. He's done so many things. As a congressman, he's really focused on not only the traditional Latino or Hispanic issues that need so much attention, in particular immigration, but also the status of Latinos in our communities and in our country. He's been a fierce advocate for justice in a number of different ways, and on the Intelligence Committee has been involved in the impeachment considerations and hearings. We thank you for all you've done, Joaquin, and we invite you to speak for 5-10 minutes about the what we're learning about what happened a year ago.
Well, first of all, thank you, Jan, and thank you to, I know Jan and everybody else who helped convene us here tonight, and to all the Indivisibles. It's good to be with you. Great to see José, my state senator, and who I served with in the House for so long, and Ray Lopez, who is now represents District 125 that I represented when I was in the state legislature. And I saw that Trey was on here as well. We have an excellent delegation in the state legislature that I know fights for us every session, and then even when session is done. So I want to say thank you to them, particularly on voting rights, for continuing to really fight back against voter suppression in Texas. And as you can imagine, as you all know, January 6th is a very solemn day for our nation. And it will be remembered, I think, as one of the days of infamy in our nation's collective memory. I was at the Capitol last year on January 6th in my office in Rayburn. And when the Congress was supposed to certify the election for Joe Biden, and we were locked in the Capitol and not allowed to leave as there was a mob that stormed both the House and the Senate chambers. And we didn't know, I didn't know at the time, because there were a bunch of people from Texas there, whether they were going to break into the House office buildings and come looking for me, or others from Texas. I know other members of Congress had the same concern because there were people from Virginia and Maryland and California and everywhere that were there. And I didn't understand on that day the complete gravity, severity, and significance of the events of that day, at least not in the way that I do now. But thankfully, the January 6th Select Committee, which is bipartisan with Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, Republicans who are part of it, are doing great work in trying to make sure that everybody that was responsible for the attack on the Capitol, the attempted coup, it was an insurrection, but it was an attempted coup because they were trying to stop the United States government from certifying Joe Biden as the rightfully elected next president of the United States. So if you notice, Benny Thompson, the chairman, is not holding many punches. He's not pulling many punches. And he has subpoenaed people like Steve Bannon and Mark Meadows, who was the president's chief of staff, and is also committed to getting to the bottom of who was involved. So that means any members of Congress who helped coordinate or participated with the people who were part of that mob will also be held accountable, whether through the Congress or through a referral to the Department of Justice. I'm convinced of that. And being tough, because this was an attempted coup, being tough and being strong on this is the only way we're going to beat back this kind of thing from happening in the future. For us at this point to go light on these people or to somehow treat it as though it was a bunch of kids with a keg at a house party. If we treat it that way, as in a light way, then it's going to encourage them to do it again, whether it's in a year or 4 years or in 8 years. And so the committee is doing an incredible amount of work. I do think, you may have read some articles in the last few days about what their plan is in terms of the public facing part of their committee work. I do think that they'll end up doing televised hearings because the American people should see exactly what's going on in the work that they're doing and should be able to hear from these witnesses that are coming forward and presenting evidence of what exactly happened on January 6th, how it came to be, and who participated in it. And so, as Jan mentioned, I've served on the Intelligence Committee since about mid-2016. So I was part of the Russia investigation, and the Intelligence Committee had parts of both impeachment inquiries or processes. So I was part of both of those. And, so now I guess I have a good sense for what a tough investigation looks like. And Benny Thompson is leading a tough investigation here that I think the American people and you all will be pleased with. And then finally, I just want to say, because I didn't get to say it last year, there were so many San Antonians that day who reached out to me and called me or texted me, and I was able to respond to some people, but some people, because of the chaos of the day, I was never able to really talk to. And, to everybody who reached out to me and my family, I just want to say thank you for your support and for your love. You can imagine, I heard from some people I hadn't heard from in 5 years, right? Or 10 years. And unfortunately, because it was a tragic day, but still, it was good to know that people were thinking about me back home. So thank you all for everything you're doing. Let's make sure that we work hard so that we have free and fair elections in 2022 and 2024. So thank you, Jan.
Thank you, Congressman. We're so delighted you could be here with us today. And I'd like to change the topic for just a moment to talk a little bit about division in our country. I personally feel this strongly every day. I pine about it. I worry about it. I don't know what to do about it. But it's just disturbing to see how deeply divided we are and becoming more so every day, every month. It's really been baffling to me in many ways why so many people believe what we understand to be lies, things that are inconsistent with facts, conspiracy theories, and misinformation. Clearly, we have different sources of information. Sure, some watch Fox News and OAN, and other people are watching the so-called mainstream media. And many people are getting their information from social media, which so often stokes, as a business plan, stokes anger and rage and fear for profit to get more clicks. And I think that may be a big piece of the answer. The other thing we need to remember is that Russian disinformation campaigns have not stopped. They're continuing. And there's massive numbers of bots and posts that are coming from them. And they want to weaken our country. Division weakens us. We need to be strong as a country, both sides together. So unfortunately, though, propaganda works. Its effect on our country is massive. And whether you try to resist or not, its effect is much bigger than most individuals realize. Certainly it's much more than I would have expected. I'm just really disturbed by how much fear and rage and anger that we have, including fear and anger about each other. We see threatening and even violent tactics, like at the school board meetings, and even harassing very threateningly children and parents on their way to school. And this is just totally unacceptable. Our country has huge and unprecedented numbers of guns in our society. So when these tensions rise with the availability of guns, the chance that people on both sides are going to get hurt is just too high. And I worry about having weapons of war in our midst, like AR-15s. So it makes us more dangerous to each other. The militias are growing and causing fear. Actually, I took my church bumper sticker off of my car because I was worried that in certain places that I drive through that might make me a target. But it's personal for everybody in different ways. It's just, I want to say that once we save our democracy this year and through 2024, we have a lot of healing to do. And I wanted to bring us to that, just that understanding. Again, we're interested in your thoughts about this. If you have ideas about what we can do to make this better. I'm sorry, I'm looking in the wrong place. I meant to look at chat and I was looking at Q&A. If you have ideas or resources that you'd like to put into the chat, please do. And we really appreciate you. I just wanted to comment on the emotional impact of what's happening in our country right now. I love people on both sides of this divide. I want people to be healthy and happy and have a positive outlook for the future. And I want us to be able to overcome this. There's so many things that we have to overcome. But first, we got to save the vote. We got to save democracy. Next, I am so honored to introduce Congressman Lloyd Doggett, who is here. He is someone who I've admired initially from afar for a long time. But then when he came to be a congressman here in San Antonio, I got to see why everybody admires him up close. He works extremely hard and works to serve his constituents. He works for justice. He's, if you've been to the state capitol, you've probably seen him grown up before your eyes as you look at the pictures as you go by. And I have done that, and I always point him out to medical students and others that I'm working with, because he's held many important jobs, but no job more important than representing his constituents here in Texas. We're sorry to lose you to Austin here in San Antonio, Congressman Doggett. We're delighted that you're here. We're honored that you're here. And we're hoping that you can help us understand what's been going on with, let me make sure I'm asking you to do the right thing here. No, I'm sorry. Hang on.
Yeah, I've got
mixed
a
up the
couple
order.
that you mentioned.
Yes, you were going to tell us about your experience on January 6th. And we also want to hear about what's going on that's undermining our democracy right now. So.
Well, thank you, Dr. Riolini, so much. And I'm an admirer of you and all the work you have done to make the lives of so many young women more benefit, and the challenges that you face through your professional career. It is always good to be teamed up with my colleague Joaquin Castro, and I appreciated his remarks just now. And actually, I just left seeing our State House colleagues, Ray Lopez and Senator Menendez. I just left 3 of your colleagues standing in front of the state capitol as Indivisible organized a rally just like you're doing for a couple hundred people there to deal with this subject. And I welcome them, as I do everyone by Zoom now, as true American patriots who care about deeply the future of our country and sustaining our democracy. You know, we gathered here right around the time that the evening was turning dark, and I believe that Indivisible and allied groups have to be the light to carry us forward against the darkness of authoritarianism that our country faces. So we, in our case in Austin, with a candlelight ceremony, we were lifting up both our voices and our prayers. I have very much enjoyed my years in Bexar County, and I have another one yet to go. And what I've learned in Bexar County will allow me to be a better representative and to continue to represent values and concerns that I hear about from Joaquin and from you that are important to the people of San Antonio. Tomorrow, while we lift up our voices tonight, has to be about renewing this struggle engaged against the malicious voter suppression, and knowing that if we turn out the vote, we can turn out some of the people that have been responsible for this suppression. I think that the Republican Party today, and you covered some of it, Jan, in your comments just now, but is sadly more of a cult of personality around Donald Trump, and is based, as President Biden called it out this morning, on lies, whether we're talking about COVID lies, or climate lies, or lies around this coup. His thugs defaced our flags by putting his name on the flag and using it as a battering ram at the Capitol. I was there seeing these events take place on January 6th, 1 year ago. And I really feel that Trump, who likes to put his name on everything, that his name belongs on one place, and that is on the gravestones of those that are buried today because of the lies that he told last year and continues to tell. And what we've got to avoid is a giant gravestone on our democracy. It was a powerful speech this morning. It affirmed that we are in a battle for the soul of America, because we've learned in the work of the January 6th Commission and in disclosures through news reports that this wasn't just a one-day affair. This was something that was planned and plotted as a true attempt to overthrow the government of the United States over a period of weeks, if not longer. Fortunately, just like might near everything else that Trump touched, this was botched and the coup failed, but we came really close and to be bipartisan about it. As far as the election returns themselves, a few courageous Republican office holders who were administering elections in Georgia, in Michigan, and Arizona stood up for democracy. And actually, that very night that we counted the vote, Kevin McCarthy, the Republican minority leader, stood up for democracy. It's just that he didn't stand up for it very long, as did Mitch McConnell. If they had stuck by what they said the night of January 6th, as we were finally able to count the vote, we would be in a much different place today. Instead, they keep giving a wink and nod to insurrectionists. They seem to me to be laying down a carpet, a red carpet, for these extreme groups that are willing to use violence to overthrow our government. I don't believe that next time that they're going to encircle the Capitol, but they may encircle our democracy and attempt to snuff it out in favor of the strongman approach of authoritarianism. We see, as Dr. Riolini said a moment ago, we see this same kind of hate and misinformation now plague school board after school board in what has become a very dangerous job. And I think we have an urgent mission that is the focus of Indivisible tonight across the country. Ezra Levin, a former staffer of mine who founded Indivisible, was at our rally here in Austin. And the focus, of course, on the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, the Freedom to Vote Act. These are very important measures. And in light of Dr. Riolini's questions this afternoon, just as an update on that, the Protecting Our Democracy Act, we passed it in the House on December the 9th, and it was bipartisan only in the sense that one person, Adam Kinzinger, who's a Republican, one of the two members of the January 6th committee, voted for it. It is stalled in Congress, as they say, about just about everything in Congress because of the fact that the majority does not rule in the Senate. It takes 60 votes for everything. And we know that on it and on John Lewis and on the Protecting Our Democracy Act, that it is an obstacle there in the Senate. To hear Senator Manchin say in November, when one of these bills came up over in the Senate, that we got Lisa Murkowski this time and we only need 9 more Republicans is incredible. We don't have time to find 9 Republicans who are willing to weaken this bill because we've got an election coming up. We've got one coming up in the Democratic primary in a little more than a month, with early voting beginning on Valentine's Day. So Senator Schumer has set this December 17th deadline, but as of this moment, we have no commitment from either Kirsten Sinema or from Joe Manchin to provide the exception, a narrow exception for the preservation of democracy in the filibuster rule to pass this, because if it takes 60 votes, we will never get there. I think that the further message that I would give is just that, frankly, we have to be prepared, and to prepare now on the assumption that Manchin and Sinema are not going to change. We make this effort this month. It's important to do that, but there are many things we can do even under the Republican suppression laws. If we start early and work harder and more creatively, there is a longer early voting period. It's possible to have the polls open from very early in the morning till I think it's 9 o'clock at night. We need to have that happen every day, and we need to register every newcomer and some old timers in our community that are not registered to vote, and try to turn this vote out, because it's our best hope to preserve democracy. Frankly, I think if the Republicans take over, it will be a very long time before they ever release power. So much at stake, all of the things you mentioned, Jan, that are issues, and so many more, but there is none more important than preserving our democracy, which is hanging by a thread. Thank you so much for your commitment and everyone who's participating tonight.
Thank you, Congressman Doggett. We so appreciate your being here and all that you do. Before I let you go, we want to know how we can help. And the things about these 3 bills, the Freedom to Vote Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and the Protecting Our Democracy Act, and then addressing the filibuster. The things that come to my mind are calling and writing our US senators even though in Texas, that seems like a brick wall, but it's still important for them to know how we feel. And do it every day if you can. Call and write President Biden, because he needs to lead the country and public opinion on this. And by joining actions and things like what we're doing today to raise awareness and get people more educated and more activated to do things for the election. So,
well, let me just respond in saying that I think I agree, and I think all those things are important. But I would have to say very candidly and directly, I would settle for one new registered voter for 10 calls to Ted Cruz. He does need to hear, but this week he began talking about impeaching President Biden if there's a Republican takeover in the House, which Joaquin and I are working so hard to prevent, and we need your help on that. But I just can't, the chance to turn out Greg Abbott by having more people voting to assure in Bexar County that we've in many past years, in gubernatorial years, we've lost many wonderful judges in our judiciary. We have the county judge race up, of course, and so many important local races across Bexar County. Get that one new person registered, because help may not be on the way from Washington, and we've got to be ready to fight by turning out our votes. And you just can't do enough to get more people involved and engaged to turn out and help us in Bexar County. Thank you so much.
thank you.
It's good to see
Thank you.
all of
Thanks
you.
for
and
joining us.
Look forward to being back soon. I have to get past the primary myself on March the 1st. And as soon as that's over, I look forward to being back in Bexar County a lot more. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Stay healthy. Jane and I would like now to talk a little bit about what Congressman Doggett has brought up. There's a lot of things that we can do to help democracy, to help save democracy. And we have a list. We're going to talk about them one at a time. I drew the odd straw since I'm kind of odd. And so here's number one. Number one is wake up, get involved, and get active.
Register to vote and become a volunteer deputy registrar to help others to register.
That's right. That is what Congressman Doggett was talking about, registering people. That's important. And the next, to learn to recognize the disinformation that's flooding social media. Get educated about what's going on.
Write letters to the editor.
Talk to your friends, family, and neighbors about the threat to democracy in our country.
Join an indivisible group like SATX Indivisible or other pro-democracy organization.
Help get out the vote. The primaries, as we know, are like tomorrow almost. February 14th is the first day of early voting. So we need to get that in the primaries and the general election, especially in the midterms. Now is the crunch. 2022 is the crunch.
Make calls and knock on doors to talk to voters. We in SATX Indivisible, we have a lot of members that are actually precinct chairs in Bexar County. So you folks who, if you're on this call, you know what I'm talking about. You guys are working your tails off right now, which is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Become a poll worker or a poll watcher. And this is an incredibly important job. There's a lot of people who may not continue doing this, and we need to step up and be strong and learn how to do this and do this. Your turn, Jane.
I'm sorry. Okay, I was just reading someone's comments, Heidi Schoenfeld's comment. Participate in local government meetings. Yes, go to council meetings, go to commissioner meetings.
School board meetings.
Yeah.
That's important. And last but not least, it's not on the slide, but it's always important to remember you could run for something. There's even an organization called Run for Something. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed our duet. Next, though, we'd like to get a little bit more feedback from our audience. And we have a poll that we'd like to ask you to do. And this is a question, I'll read it out loud. How are you feeling about taking action to fight for democracy? Number 1, tired and discouraged. I don't see the point. 2, somewhat tired and discouraged. I'm not sure we can make the needed difference. 3, feeling okay, planning to do the usual things. 4, very concerned. I plan to do several of the suggested actions. And 5, I'm fired up and I want to do all I can to turn this around and save our democracy. It says here that host and panelists can't vote, so we're looking to you all. Please fill it out, and we have we'll keep it up for another 30 seconds. So put your answer in there. Where are you? We're taking your temperature. All right. I know that it sort of depends a little bit for me on what time of day and that you ask me this, but most of the day I'm the same number. A little different for different times of day. Of course, in the morning you have to have coffee. I have to have coffee, pardon me. You all don't necessarily have to have it, but okay. And if our tech assistant can, oh, here we go. All right. So here's what we see. We didn't have anyone who didn't see the point. Thank goodness.
Yay.
Yay. Well, we're doing pretty good there. But we have some people who are tired and discouraged, not sure if they can make the needed difference. And we appreciate your honesty. That's 10%. 8% are feeling okay. They're planning to do the usual things for an election, what they usually do. 50% are very concerned and plan to do several of the suggested actions. And 1/3 are fired up and want to do all they can to turn this around and save our democracy. And on mine, it says, you did not answer this question. I know, because you told me I couldn't. Okay. So, so that gives me hope. We have a lot of folks out there who are looking to help, and that's going to be really important. We need to take good care of each other in this year and keep each other healthy and supported. Okay. As we go next, I will ask Peter Bella, another member of SATX Indivisible, to introduce the next segment.
Thank you. And I have to say what a lot of fun it's been to be to be listening in on this webinar. Great group of panelists, and I enjoy the spirit. I would also ask if people have questions that they want us to follow through on, to put them in the Q&A. I'm Peter Bella with SATX Indivisible. Bill Maher is a controversial public figure. In the following video, Maher begins with solid facts and then paints a picture of the near future. His story is compelling. No one knows how our democracy will change, but we believe his cautionary story is worth listening to. Thank you.
I think there's some fact checking that could use. Lots of those details would need to be followed up. I think that the predictions for the future are uncertain, but they're very plausible and they're very scary. So it's important for us to understand that the insurrection is not over. but it's now appointed not at the past election, but at future elections. And it's not yet clear how this can be stopped, but it's essential to be stopped. This is a scary scenario. Please continue to put your thoughts and your comments and your suggestions into the chat. We are very interested, and if you know constitutional lawyers, let us know about that too. Peter, would you show us where there are some additional resources?
Absolutely. I have collected resources for this event, and we'll have the image of the graphic page in here. Here we go. So the idea is you can see the bit.ly link that's in very bold letters to the right hand of the screen. That's the link that if you click on, you'll get this web page. This web page contains contact information for us at SATX Indivisible, all the information to find the speakers. I'm so delighted to have had our speakers tonight. We talked about the 3 bills, the key legislation, the definition of the filibuster, there's no such bill, and sources for the materials. That is, the opening video was from the Senate Select, or rather the House Select Committee on January 6th. That full bill and full video that I used some of tonight is there, as well as lots of other material. So simply enough, with that URL that's at the top, a very quick, brief bit.ly link, you can find all of this material and much more. Thank you.
And Jane, you're going to tell us about SATX Indivisible contact information?
Absolutely.
We're a little over time, so we need to
Okay.
move ahead.
Hi, everybody. We would love to hear from you, and we invite you to learn more about SATX Indivisible. We are fighting to save democracy through grassroots outreach, collaboration, and activism. We work alongside other Texas Indivisible groups and members of the Texas Grassroots Alliance. We are proud to participate in the Declaration of American Democracy Public Citizen Campaign to host a vigil to commemorate January 6th. There are over 200 vigils happening today all over the country. So please visit our Facebook public page and do not hesitate to get in touch with us using our email address. If you would like to speak to us about our work and joining SATX Indivisible, please send us an email. All of the information we have gathered for you is available in links and resources page that Peter just told you about. I just wanted to say one other thing. 3 years ago when I first joined, 4 years ago when I first joined Indivisible, Indivisible was giving some organizing training. And one of the things that we learned was that we should be meeting with people who want to know more about our group for a cup of coffee or privately, just 2 people talking, getting to know each other. And I am praying and I am waiting for the day when I will be able to call people up and say, hey, let's get together for coffee. Right now, not going to do it. Anyway, please write to us, talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce someone who I really admire. I've known her for a relatively short time, but the Reverend Erin Walter is an amazing person. She's a Unitarian Universalist minister, a musician, a writer, a dancer, and an activist. She's affiliated with Wildflower Church in Austin, and she serves as the acting executive director of the Texas Unitarian Universalist Justice Ministry. Erin, Reverend Erin, welcome. And thank you for helping us conclude our event with a prayer, a time of reflection.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you to everyone who spoke tonight and who organized this very powerful program. I feel it in my body, the importance of this gathering, the importance of what we're doing together and the work that we're doing. And I want to first invite each of us just to take a breath together, okay? Before I offer prayer and meditation, I want to offer you a confession. In my faith, Unitarian Universalism, we have 8 principles, and one of them talks about democracy. It says that we honor the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process in society at large and in our congregations. And I have caught myself at times wondering if that really needs to be in there. And after January 6th, I don't doubt for a second that democracy needs all of us to be faithful to it, to be fighting for it. This past year, since the insurrection at the Capitol, I have been giving talks, sermons over Zoom like this. And one of the things that I've been talking about is that moment, watching that video that you saw at the beginning. It shook me to my core to hear words like gallows and heave ho, and to see those bodies crushed together. And I'm going to tell you the truth from my heart, which is that the thing that disturbed me was hearing, and I'm a former journalist, hearing a fellow journalist introduce that video or some footage and saying, and this is common language, right? We use light and dark metaphors, especially in religion, but in all of life, we often use light and dark metaphors. And he said, what you're about to watch, I warn you, is very dark. And I wanted to reach into the screen and say, no, there's such beauty in darkness, in blackness. I look out my sky and I see the stars. What we were watching at the Capitol was the behavior of white supremacist beliefs. And it's horrifying. And there are other beliefs that play there as well. But we have to name that much of what we were seeing at the Capitol was white supremacy, trying to take hold of a country that is beautiful because of its diversity. When Shirley Chisholm, a Black woman running for president, was asked why she would do it when it seemed futile, she said, because I am in love with the America that does not yet exist. So I want to ask each of you to reach in to whatever your faith tradition or your ancestors or whatever gives you ground of being. We're here of different faiths and no faith, whatever gives you hope, because I'll be damned if we're going to be doing this work without hope. Claim your hope. Connect to that which is sacred to you. And let us open ourselves to the truth that we are in this fight with many. We are not alone. Holy of many names, that speaks all languages and knows no man-made borders, be with us. Be with us, be with all of us in this vigil tonight, all around the country. Our hearts and our prayers are with the families of those who died as the result of this violence, those who were hurt, those who were traumatized. And just as I feel in my body, an hour and a half after watching that video, still just horror, I can only imagine how it feels for those who were there. Please continue to surround them in comfort and know that our love is with them as we fight, as we work, as we do what we must for democracy, for the America that we know we are and can be. And lastly, I want to encourage all of you. Jan mentioned that I do music and dance. I can hear my wind chimes on my porch right now. Cling to the things that bring you joy. This is not easy work. Cling to the things that bring you joy, to the people you love, and nourish yourselves. We are tired. It's been a pandemic. It is a pandemic. We cannot afford to despair. We can be tired. We must take naps. I swear by naps and coffee, but we cannot afford to despair. Thank you so much for your work. Thank you to the sacred and the ground of being that holds us all. May we do this work together and may we prevail. Blessed be.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Aaron. Let me ask Jane to speak and close for us. Thank you, everyone. Jane?
Thank you, Reverend Aaron. I'm going to cry. That was so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing those thoughts with us. And many thanks to the elected officials who joined us and to all our speakers. And we extend a special thanks to our Vigil for Democracy team. We shed a lot of blood, sweat, and tears over doing the preparation for this, and it was definitely worth every single minute. And we absolutely must thank Sushanto Modal, who presided over this Zoom webinar with expertise, accuracy, and artistry. And thank all of you for being here with us tonight. We hope this event has sharpened your awareness of what's going on in the US and in Texas politics today. We hope you are ready to meet the challenges ahead for saving our democracy in 2022 and beyond. As you leave, you will be directed to the links and resources page, and we wish you health, safety, love, and justice.